just FYI, especially if you were absent Friday and did not take the test, then you should better be writing these notes on the pink paper, because the pink paper is what you get to use on your test. Sammy's hand was up first, so which one? Number 14. All right, so it says identify the common ratio in the following sequence, and you get multiple choice options on your Galileo test, but you do not get multiple choice options on your retake. All right, so just keep that in mind. Identify the common ratio. What's basically, how do you find that?
-60 over.
-60 over 120. So if you want to write like a formal definition, or if you want to rewrite this example in that box, go ahead. But what I would write to help me is that the common ratio is found by dividing each term by its previous term. All right, so that's what I would write to help me, because I know some kids are gonna divide it by the term that comes after it, which would be wrong. It needs to be the one that comes before it, previous to it. So like just take a term like -60, divide it by the term in front of it, that'll give you your common ratio. So what does this fraction simplify to? -1/2 is correct. All right, negative divided by a positive should give you a negative, so you can cancel out like A and B because of that. But then, of course, when you simplify the fraction, it has to be this number on top of the previous number. So that's why it's -1/2, not 2. That makes sense? Any questions on this one? All right, Taylor. Number 2. All right, so also, Jasmine, you can go now. So number 2, it gives you a graph and it says which function is represented by the graph below, and it gives you options. On your retake, you won't have options. You'll have to come up with it'll give you the equation. You'll have to make the graph yourself. So revisit those notes before the retake. But look at this graph. Before I even show you the options, is this growth or decay? Decay, because it's decreasing from left to right. So like how you read a book, this is how you look at it, from left to right. So since it's decreasing, it is decay. Growth is where it increases, so it would look something like that. All right, but this one is definitely decay. And when it's decay, so here's like your basic formula for exponential functions. When it's decay, should B be greater or less than 1? Less than 1 if it's decay. If it's growth, then B should be greater than 1. All right, so I know that the number that's attached to the exponent needs to be less than 1 since we're talking about decay. So look at the answer options. Now, why is it definitely not A? Because X is supposed to be the exponent, not the base number. All right, since it's not the exponent in option A, you can eliminate that one. You can also eliminate option B for the same reason. Those are there to trick you. X needs to be in the exponent spot. And then you look at C and D, only one of them is for decay, which matches our graph. Which one is for decay? D. Because that is the one where B is less than 1. So that's why that one's the decay one. This one would be for growth, because in option C, 2 is greater than 1. So that one's growth. Does that make sense? Any questions? All right, any others from the test? Yes, at number 10. Number 10. All right, so 10. Okay, find the average rate of change from x equals 7 to x equals 14 for the function f of x equals 0.01 times 2 to the x, and select the correct answer below. This is a really great question, especially on your retake. It'll be worded to you just like this, except it won't give you answer options. So you have to, find it and write the answer yourself. So average rate of change. Is that a formula that I am providing you? No, because it's a formula that we use so often that you guys should have it memorized. So what is that formula? Good. So if you don't know it or have it written on your pink paper yet, then probably write it down now. Average rate of change is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And to use this formula, which we have used like dozens of times, you should know that you need two coordinates. You need an x1, y1, and an x2, y2. Now, it doesn't give me a table with coordinates already there. It doesn't give me a graph, but it does give me two x values. So those x values are going to be part of my coordinates, so 7 and 14 for the x's. I just need to figure out the y values. But does this setup make sense so far? All right, now how do I find the y values? When in doubt, you can just kind of remember, plug in the x's. All right, to find the y values, whether it's for your table when you're graphing or whether it's for problems like these, you plug in the given x's. So we'll give you x's in each one. So like here's the given formula. One of the x values it wants us to look at is when x is 7. So fill in 7 where the x goes and then calculate that. And then do the same for when x is 14. All right, plug it in where the x goes and calculate that. I know sometimes you guys have trouble with the Galileo calculator. That's why I said, if you need help, ask me during the test. But it should look like this in your calculator. For Galileo, it just might have that little caret symbol instead, but that would be how you enter it correctly. All right, the left side is just notation, don't do anything there. I'm going to put this in my calculator right now. Also, just keep in mind, you can use Desmos on your retake. So if that's the one you're comfortable with, then practice with that one. So when I enter 7 for the x, I get 1.28. Is that what you guys got? Yeah. Okay, good. And then when I plug in 14 for the x, I get 163.84, which makes that my y value for this one. All right. Now is when we can put it into this formula that's in blue. Now that we have the x's and the y's. Questions so far? All right, so if I labeled it like this, then it is 163.84 minus 1.28 over 14 minus 7. All right, I'm gonna subtract it out. On top, I get 162.56. On the bottom, 14 minus 7 is 7. So divide 162.56 by 7, and that's how I get the average rate of change of 23.22. All right, so that's why the answer option A is correct. Questions there? All right, so make sure you have the formula written down if you want to write down an example so that you can just place the numbers on your test. Go ahead. All right, any others from the test? Tammy? Number 6. All right, so which situation is best represented by the graph? So again, on your test, you'll have to make the graph yourself. So you'll just have to be able to work backwards. All right, but on this one, they give you the graph and then they give you some answer options. And notice what formula do they look like? Does it look like a formula that I provide you? Yes. It looks like, if you look on the whiteboard, the ones from the 5-2 lesson. So you just have to know which one of those to use. So the one for growth or the one for decay? Is this graph growth or decay? Decay. Decay. So that means that you use a decay formula, which is the one that has plus or minus? Minus. All right, because it's decreasing. So remember what these letters stand for. Y just kind of means output, so just keep Y the same. What does A stand for? The initial amount, so what you're starting with. What is the amount that I'm starting with according to the graph? 45,000, good. So I'm going to write that for what A is going to be. I'll put it in the same spot in the formula. And then what does R stand for? Your rate, and how does it need to be written in your formula? As a decimal. So you don't really see the rate, but you know it's decreasing, right? So if it's 1 minus whatever the rate is, should what's inside here be bigger or smaller than 1? Smaller than 1. So I don't actually know what my rate is. I mean, you probably can figure it out. But I just know it needs to be smaller than 1 since it's decay. Malaya, you can go now, and then you can go. All right, and then T is supposed to be, well, it stays T in the answer options, but if it says income over 5 years, then maybe it's fine. All right, but any questions so far? All right, so T is for time, but again, it didn't really specify the time. So then looking at my answer options, I can eliminate all the ones that don't have the initial amount as 45,000. So I can eliminate B and C. Between A and D, which one has the correct number inside parentheses?
D.
D. Because since we know it's decay, that number should be smaller than 1 in here. Because it's 1 minus whatever the growth rate was. Does that make sense? All right. So be able to graph it on a test. So if it gives you an equation, be able to graph it by hand and making a table and doing all the things. All right, any others from the test? Going once. Yes. Number 15. All right, so a certain forest covers an area of 2,000 square kilometers. Suppose that each year this area decreases by 6%. What is the function that best represents the area of the forest each year, and how much area remains after 12 years? Round your answer. So to do this problem, am I providing you the formula that you would use? Yes. There's 2 options though. So is it going to be the one with the plus sign or the one with the minus sign? So since it's decreasing, we use the one for decay. This is a decay problem since it's decreasing. So use the one with the minus sign. That'll be your model. All right, we said A is for initial amount. So what is my initial amount in this problem? Good. So far I have y equals 2,000, which is in all the problems, so that doesn't really help me. And then I have in parentheses 1 minus the rate. What's the rate?
0.06.
Good, so you put it as a decimal. So R needs to be a decimal. If you're ever unsure how to do percents to decimals, what do? Divided by 100%, good. So that gives you the decimal of 0.06. All right, and then to the t power, which if you look at how they set up the formula, they just put x. But it also wants to know after 12 years. So t is going to be 12. All right, now if you look at your answer options, none of them have the number 1 in parentheses, like the 1 minus. So what did they do? Why don't they have the 1 minus in any of them? Because they already. Yes, they already did the subtraction. What is 1 minus 0.06? 0.94. So if you're not used to seeing that, be used to seeing that. All right, it's perfectly fine for them to do the subtraction for you. So that's why it can't be option A, because it shouldn't be greater than 1. It's not grow. Can't be option B, because that's not 1 minus 0.06. We're between C and D. So C and D have the same formula. They just have different answers for after 12 years. All right, so we just have to put this in the calculator and then pick the answer that is closest. So I put it in my calculator. What do you get from putting it in your calculator? Good, and is that closer to 952 or about 1400? That's why D is the correct answer. All right, again, on your test, you won't have answer options, so you'll have to know how to put it in the formula yourself and then use your calculator to find the answer. Questions on this one? All right, any others? Yes, number 8. All right, so the function f of x is graphed below in black. So this is like my parent function, the one in black. And the red graph is f of x plus k. And then the original graph, which is f of x, is in black. And we need to find the value of k. So since we're going from the black graph to the red graph, you're going to want to count from the black graph to the red graph. And the easiest way to count it, I think, is looking at the y-intercepts. So what's the y-intercept of f of x? 5. And what's the y-intercept of the red graph?
3.
So if I'm counting from 5 to 3, so we're going down 1, 2. And since we had to go down, that makes k -2. All right, is that what it says is the right answer on your test?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so a lot of people just forgot the negative, but I told you to try and trick you. So if you're counting downward, you need to put negative. If you're counting upward, just keep it positive. Questions there? Questions on a different one? Yes, number 3. Number 3. All right, so this one's a good one to go over because people always struggle with the explicit rule for some reason, even though I do provide you the formula on the board. So again, on your test, I think you have a multiple choice and an open response for this subject, so just keep that in mind. It says, which equation is the explicit rule for the following sequence? So here's the provided formula. It's a sub n equals a sub 1 times r to the n minus 1. It'll be on the whiteboard during your test, so if you need it, look at the whiteboard or write it on your pink paper now. To use this formula, what two things do I need to identify? Which will replace the a sub 1. Good. So a sub 1 is your first term in the sequence, or your initial number also works. So what is my first term in the sequence? It's 8. All right, because that's what it says right here. Here's that sequence. So 8 will replace a sub 1. So any of them that don't have 8 in the a sub 1 position can be removed. So C and B are definitely not it. What else gets replaced with a number? The R, yes, and it stands for what in a sequence? It's kind of like your rate, but in a sequence, we mostly call it the common ratio. All right, so what is my common ratio of this sequence? 1/2. And again, you just take one of the terms like 4 divided by the previous term, and that's how you get your common ratio. So R is 1/2. So between these two, A and B, which one's correct? B. All right, so A was there to trick you because a lot of kids don't like seeing a smaller number on top, so they'll just flip it. All right, but make sure it's for the common ratio, the number divided by the number before it. Questions there? All right, if this also helps you, if you just look at the sequence and the numbers are decreasing, then your answer should be a fraction. If it's increasing, then it should be a whole number. All right, any others from the test? I think we have time for like one more. Yes, James?
Number 13.
Number 13. All right, find the next 3 terms in the following sequence. So in order to find the next 3 terms, what do I need to find first? You need to find the common ratio. So again, take one of your numbers, except for maybe the first number, and divide it by the number before it. So 4,374 divided by 131.22. I'm going to put that in my calculator because I don't know how to reduce that in my head. And when I put it in my calculator, it gives me the decimal 0.33 or 0.3 repeating. Do you guys know what that is as a fraction? It's 1/3. All right. A lot of calculators have fraction to decimal buttons. Use it, but sorry, I don't know how else to tell you that, like how to get from 0.3 repeating to 1/3 other than memorizing. So that's my common ratio. So that's what I'm multiplying by each time. Or in other words, I'm basically dividing by 3 each time. Same thing. So to find my next term, I need to divide this by 3. So I divide it by 3, and what do I get? 486, comma, and then you need to divide 486 by 3 to find the next term. So what's that? 162. Good. And then you need to divide 162 by 3 to find the next term, which is 54 is correct. Now, if you guys put this and it marked it wrong, just raise your hand. All right, anyone else? Don't be shy. All right, so I'll give you the point back if you put this, but it marked it wrong for some reason. The reason is because Galileo only lets me put in one solution. Don't put your pink papers away. I'm gonna come around and show you. But Galileo only lets me put one right answer. So the way that we put the right answer was with no spaces and 2 commas. All right, so sorry if it marked it wrong. I'll give you the point back if it did. All right, I'm gonna just come around